Changing bitcoins for currencies or traditional currencies has always been a bit of an arduous process or a scary process. So the notion that we could reach a point of having decentralized exchanges has been a noble one for some time. And finally, we have a working version in Bitsquare. So without further ado, I will hand over to Manfred, who will tell us more about the project. Manfred.
Thank you very much. Thank you everybody for coming. It's a pleasure to be here in London, probably the most active community in the Bitcoin space and Ethereum space, of course, as well, even more maybe. And I'm really happy also, and also yes, thanks a lot for the Coinscrum team and Tomar and Luis and everybody for organizing this and to keep the spirit of open and free entrance meetups in this style. That's really valuable because many other has changed already with commercializing this gathering of people who are sharing same interests, and I think that's a pity. It's great to see that it's still working like that. And I'm really happy to be in a space like this because I was a musician in the past and we usually played in spaces like this. And when I started working as developer and ended up at a financial company, I felt more and more distance from these roots, and when I started Bitsquare working in open source, I felt that I came back home to these roots, and doing my presentation here in such a space feels right. Thank you. So now start. Bitsquare. I want to start with a quote from Satoshi Nakamoto, but unfortunately what's happened the last days, I have to make a small interruption, and Luis, maybe you can skip to the next. Because people think Satoshi Nakamoto is somebody else, but don't believe the bullshit. Science rocks, media sucks. Read this blog post from Emin Gün-Sira. He has very, very good arguments, very profound. He's a researcher. He got famous with this selfish mining article, paper. He's a great guy. Read this and yeah, don't believe this shit what's going on. Okay, let's move to the real stuff. And that's from the real Satoshi Nakamoto, a quote from the white paper. What is needed is an electronic payment system based on cryptographic proof instead of trust, allowing any two willing parties to transact directly with each other. And that transact directly, that's for me the core of Bitcoin and the motivation why I created Bitsquare. Sorry. Because yeah, we have this great money system where we can send to anybody in the world globally in an instant of a second money without anybody in between, really directly from one to the other. But we don't have a system, we don't had a system before where you can get into the system, into the Bitsquare system, Bitcoin system in a way which follows the same principles. You need to go to a centralized exchange, they are holding your funds and your data, you need to register and everything, so that is a completely different model. And when we like we see here, that's the traditional model, and that's not, it's basically nothing bad, we just could not do better in the past. I mean, that's a very old 1,000 years of model when two people want to do any exchange of money or whatever, and they are not have a perfect trust relationship, then they are looking out for somebody who they trust both, and then this third party is taking the money for both, and when the transaction is done, they are releasing the money, and that's basically not so bad. I mean, when you don't have other opportunities, that's probably the best version what you came out. But since Bitcoin, at least, we have better solutions and we can do better. And one very problematic stuff with that, in combination with Bitcoin, is that the transparent nature of the blockchain does not work well with this model, because on Bitcoin you are not perfectly anonymous. You're only anonymous when your Bitcoin address is not linked to your real life identity. As soon as that get linked together, you're completely public, and that's even worse, like with the traditional financial system, where only the bank and the government knows about your transactions, but your neighbor does not know how much you earn. But when you have a public ledger where everybody can read this, and your real life identity get connected with your bitcoins, then you're completely public to the whole world. And most people are not very interested to use such a system, and especially not the companies who want to expose their financial transaction to all their competitors and so on. So that would simply fail. And these exchanges, they play a very central role, because those are the gatekeepers. Everybody who wants to purchase Bitcoin when you're not a miner and really mining it yourself, or when you're getting your Bitcoin in another way, 99% of the people are purchasing their first Bitcoins over the centralized exchanges, and at this point their identity gets connected with these Bitcoins. And with coin tracing and analysis of the flow of this transaction, you get a lot of information out. And there are a lot of companies working on this. Graph theory is a well-studied field. It's very hard for humans to follow all this complicated flow, but for machines and algorithms it's quite easy. And there are not many good solutions out. There are not many good solutions out yet to get back your privacy, like CoinJoin. There are nearly no decentralized CoinJoin solutions where you can mix your coins again to get back your privacy. And the few which are existing, like Join Market, they are not easy to use for non-technical people. So I think it's a really critical point. And for me personally, this violation of privacy and this problem that you are losing your privacy, your financial privacy to these companies at the first place, and then later to the governments and to everybody. I think that's very critical, and that's a very fundamental human right. Many people are not aware that privacy is a human right, and it was completely clear in the 90s when I worked in a company. People who has done in some departments some kind of data mining, they were very silent about what they're doing, because there was law which was not allowed. And so today they are proud to do big data and whatever, and business with data. I mean, we're living in a strange time, and I think we have to go back to that what was normal thousands of years, because privacy between people was normal all the time. We're just living since 9/11 in such a strange inverted world. So, but one thing, I don't know if you can see this, it's a dollar note with some cocaine on it, and the connection to Bitsquare is not what you might think in the first place. It's that it's about fungibility, and a very important property of money. It's about, as you know, every dollar note, or nearly every dollar note, has traces of cocaine on it. And fungibility is the property that every unit of money has exactly the same value and is interchangeable with any other unit. So when you are receiving such a dollar note which has traces of cocaine on it, you don't have the obligation to check it and maybe reject it or whatever, because you simply would not accept it. When somebody is giving you a dollar note and you know that maybe somebody came and confiscated this dollar note because it was used once in the history in an illegal transaction, you say, keep your dollar note, give me real money. That's not good money. And when Bitcoin would go in this direction, where they're losing privacy, where they're attaching history on the Bitcoins with coin tracing and so on, they would simply destroy Bitcoin. Those companies who are working on this, they are not doing a service for Bitcoin. They are maybe doing a service for the investors and making money somehow, but they are not working for Bitcoin, in my opinion. And I think that's at the end the worst thing with this situation, because it will be a huge problem for user adoption, and even those people who are not concerned about privacy, because probably they have not thought enough about privacy, they should be concerned about user adoption, and usually they are because they want to make money. And a Bitcoin which is not fungible will not have user adoption. It will be a worse currency like the US dollar. And another important point, of course, is security. I mean, an exchange which is holding user funds and user data can get hacked. And I think we have seen, and some people remember the old days, where quite a lot of money got hacked and destroyed and stolen, and it happens all the time at the end. And there is basically no solution out for this. As Andreas Antonopoulos said in one talk in Barcelona, no Bitcoin company should think that they can protect the user's data better when even, or that they can protect the user's data when even the most wealthiest and biggest company like Sony cannot do it. And even the Pentagon cannot do it. They get leaked and get hacked as well. So forget it. You cannot secure users' data and money. It's just a question of time until somebody hacks it, because it's a huge bounty out for all the criminals. I mean, when you have an exchange and there are millions there, yeah, it's a huge bounty for them. And it's just a question of time when you become sufficiently relevant for them that you get in troubles with that. And the only solution, in my opinion, to avoid these problems is to decentralize everything. And of course, decentralize everything sounds very simple, but it's very hard to implement actually. But luckily, we have seen successful projects which have done this already. I mean, most famously BitTorrent and Bitcoin itself, and Bitsquare is in this tradition that we take it really serious, the decentralization aspect, and apply to all aspects and all layers of the project. And I think that's the only way how you can move away from these traditional models where you have a controlling party which is holding the funds, the data, which is controlling the resources, extracting value from this, to go to a really peer-to-peer model where people are connected directly with each other and exchanging value directly. And I think it's also a shift of this peer-to-peer economy. People get this opportunity to create value in direct connection. And at the moment, we have this famous sharing companies like Uber and Airbnb, and they are actually extracting the value, what the people are creating between them, and they are extracting this value for their profits. Of course, the people also have some value, otherwise they would not use it. But we can do better today. We can give it back to the people, that the value stays in the relationship of the people. And I think that's a very important shift for the whole society. Sorry. So, what is Bitsquare and how is Bitsquare aiming to solve all these issues? Also, Bitsquare is basically a desktop application. You download it, install it. It's available for all operating systems. It's a simple installer. Just double-click it, and that's it. It's a peer-to-peer application. It uses a custom peer-to-peer network over Tor and Tor hidden services. So your IP address does not exist in this context. You are private with that, and we get all the great privacy feature and security from Tor. But no worry, you don't need to install anything extra or configure it. It's all integrated in Bitsquare, so you don't see Tor at the end. As I said, Bitsquare, the main problem with centralized exchanges is that they're holding the user funds and data, and Bitsquare is never holding your funds or your data. Everything is completely private on your side, and of course when you are interacting, when you are making a trade with the other trader and you are selling Bitcoin and then you're receiving the fiat money, you need to exchange the data needed for this exchange, like the bank account data, but that's only between the traders. Nobody else knows about this. I don't know, when people are trading, I don't know anything about this basically. And all the communication is encrypted and routed over Tor, so it's a private, the data are either completely private or completely public, like the offers, what everybody wants to read, of course, and anybody can access this data. So Bitsquare does not have any privileged access to this data or any control of any such resources. There is no registration required. So you can download the application and you can simply start. You need to fill in your payment account data, like your bank account, when you want to use bank account for the transfer, when you want to trade with altcoins. As Bitsquare is not only for fiat money, for national currencies, it's also for altcoins, so you can trade Bitcoin to altcoins. When you trade with altcoins, you just fill in your Ethereum address or whatever, and that's it. And then you can take an offer, or you can create an offer and can start. There is no verification process, no registration process. Simply installing and start. Of course, it's everything open source and transparent. We're using GPL license, which is, I think, the best for such a project. And a very important part is that Bitsquare is not a startup and it's not a company. It's designed like a decentralized autonomous organization. I will talk more about this later. But it was very important to apply the decentralization also on this organizational layer, because otherwise this company would become the single point of failure. And we have seen this in the past before BitTorrent. Napster got shut down because it was a company. And of course, there are no servers, the infrastructure is all decentralized. So how does the security work? How to make a trade and the trade process secure in such a system? To replace this escrow, this third party where both are trusting and you put your money in, and at the end he's giving the money out to the other trader. To replace this with a trustless system, we have this great feature of Bitcoin to the multi-signatures. Is everybody familiar with multi-signature? Okay, I don't need to explain this then, or is anybody? No. Explain? Okay, yeah, multi-signature is a great feature where it's basically like a virtual lockbox. So people can put in the money, but to get out the money, you need several keys, and you can define how many keys you need and what's the set of the signing keys. So, for instance, a 2 of 3 multisig means that there are 3 keys available, and you need minimum 2 keys to unlock this lockbox and get the money out again. That's the basic model of the multisig, and that's it's a very simple version of a smart contract where you are creating a contract in this Bitcoin system, where you define, okay, when people are putting in the money, to get out the money, 2 of these 3 people need to sign, or of these key holders. And that's very powerful. And the Bitcoin transaction, how the Bitcoin transactions are designed, they have another very powerful feature, which is not very, most people are not very conscious about this. But it's this feature that you have multiple inputs and multiple outputs, or you can also have just one input and one output. And that a transaction is only valid when the sum of the inputs is larger as or the same as the output. You cannot spend more money like you put in. And that's trivial at the end, but that's a very important feature, that you can create atomic transactions where 2 different people make an input to the transaction, and they can sign their input or their part. I can make a transaction and sign this. I'm happy to put in 1 Bitcoin, and the output need to be 1,1 Bitcoin. And who is paying the missing 0,1 Bitcoin? I don't mind, because I'm only interested that the output is correct. Then I give this transaction, which is not valid, because the Bitcoin network would not accept this transaction. So there's no risk if I share this transaction with anybody, because anybody who is willing to add this missing 0,1 Bitcoin can make the transaction valid, and I don't care who is this person. I'm only interested in the output. And that enables this possibility that you can create together a transaction, and to avoid the problem of the who pays first, the who pays first problem, that when you need to pay in a security deposit, and when you are the first, and this is locked, and then the other does not follow, he has nothing to lose, how to force him to also pay in. That's you can be solved with this, because this security deposit, which will get explained in a second, will be locked in one atomic transaction, so it's all or nothing. Either both have locked in at the same time, or nobody has locked in, and that's very important and powerful. And the security deposit, as explained, that's used for creating the incentives for both traders to follow correctly the protocol. Because when only the Bitcoin seller would lock up his Bitcoin and the buyer don't need to pay anything, and the next step would be that the buyer need to make the fiat, the national currency transfer, then the buyer has nothing to lose. He has nothing on stake. He could just go on holiday and forget about it, and then the other trader has the problems to get out the money, and the buyer has nothing, no problem with this. And to avoid this, to create an incentives for the people to follow the protocol like defined, we add the security deposit. So also when you're buying Bitcoin, you need to put in this multisig a small amount of security deposit. At the moment it's very low, it's about 0.01 Bitcoin, so €4 whatever. And later it will maybe higher. We will adopt it when we see that there are people not scamming, that they're not following the protocol in this way, that they just forget about it, then we see that it's too low. It does not hurt enough that people are following. Then we need to increase it. And the third key holder, so this multisig, these three keys are in possession of the two traders. Also every trader has one key. So in the normal process, at the end of the transaction, both traders are signing the payout, and that's fine. They don't need this third person. And this third person, who only becomes active when there are problems, is an arbitrator. And there's a planned, it's still not implemented, a decentralized arbitration system. So everybody can become basically an arbitrator. They need to make an extra security deposit, which has nothing to do with this security deposit. That's just needed to avoid that an arbitrator make a scam with one trader and then make the payout in favor to this and scam the other trader. To avoid these problems, he need to lock up a lot of money, something like 5 or 10 Bitcoin, and in a multisig as well. And the key holders from this multisig will be the arbitrators with the highest reputations, which are probably connected to the Bitsquare team, and people which we know personally that they are not scammers. And it's a little bit like traditional law system. You have this layer of instances, and at the end you have a Supreme Court. And of course it's never perfect, because also the Supreme Court can be corrupt. But it's very unlikely, and it works basically in practice. And the incentives for a Supreme Court to make a scam is very, very low. I mean, that would be stupid. And the same here, these high reputation arbitrators, which are probably team members, I mean, when they would collude with another arbitrator to scam a user for half a Bitcoin or so, they would be completely insane. So, yeah, that's planned for the future. So it's still not implemented because it's a little bit a complex system to build this with a multisig and to make this all. At the moment, I'm the only arbitrator because it was the most practical. At the moment, there are just software bugs and usability problems, and I get the direct feedback. And actually, there are not many cases, but it's the most practical. And the people who are using the software, they're already trusting me, because otherwise they would not install it. And I'm not so stupid to scam a trader and destroy my own project. I mean, I would like to keep the questions later, because otherwise I think it loses the flow. But I'm open for any questions later if it's okay for you. And I also don't want to make too much emphasis about the arbitration system, because it's basically like a customer care system, where when you are using a service, you're not interested how the customer care is working. You're just expecting that it works. When you have problems, you know there is somebody who helps you out. And that should be the same here. So it should be nearly invisible for the users. And actually, when you do a trade, you get automatically pre-selected an arbitrator, and you don't care about this. Only when you have a problem, you get in the software the possibility to get in contact, and that's also integrated in the system. You have then a encrypted chat system there, where you can chat with the arbitrator and communicate, and he tries to find out what was happening and make then the payout with one of the traders in favor of one of the traders. So yeah, that's the next. And how the trade, the concept how this exchange works, I want to show in this slide. Also, I can only give a high-level overview, because of course there are too many details. Don't want to that you get lost. And you can read on our webpage, you can find the white paper and you can read much more about this. Yeah, we have here two traders, Alice on the left side. She wants to buy Bitcoin. So she's the buyer of Bitcoin. When I say the buyer, I always refer to the Bitcoin side. And on the other side, we have Bob, who wants to sell Bitcoin. He has some Bitcoin and wants to get rid of this. And Alice, for instance, she can create an offer. She can say, okay, I want to buy one Bitcoin for $500. And she's creating in the application this offer, fill in all the data, what's needed for this, quite simple, and publish this offer to the peer-to-peer network. So everybody in the peer-to-peer network, every application, which is every Bitsquare application, is receiving this offer, and this offer gets collected in a table, and you can sort it by currency or whatever. And Bob can browse these offers, and he can select an offer what he thinks is a good price. So let's assume that Bob thinks that one Bitcoin for $500 is a good price, and he takes this offer. And at this moment, when he takes the offer, the peer-to-peer system is creating this multisig. So that's a little bit a complex process in the background, but the users don't see anything from this. It takes 1 or 2 seconds, and then the multisig is created, and at that moment the money of both, also the security deposit of both and one Bitcoin from Bob, what he wants to sell, get locked up in this multisig. And before this moment, the money is always on the local wallet. So when Alice is creating the offer, the money is on her wallet. It's just reserved that she cannot accidentally spend the money, because otherwise Bob cannot take the money when this money is not there. But it has not left her wallet. And just at the moment when the trade really starts, when Bob is taking the offer, then the money gets locked up in the multisig, and the money also has not left or whatever. It's just locked in this multisig, and both have the keys, and the arbitrator has the keys to unlock it later in the process. So that that deposit transaction get published to the peer-to-peer network, and at this moment we have this 1,1.02 Bitcoin locked up in this multisig. That's the sum of these two security deposits, 0.01 Bitcoin plus the 1 Bitcoin from Bob. And as we said before, we have this feature of this atomic transaction, so that's a all or nothing model. Either both has locked up everything in the same time or nobody. And then the next step is that Alice has to wait for at least one blockchain confirmation to avoid a double spend, because Bob theoretically could make a double spend, and then when Alice makes the fiat transfer directly, she could get scammed. To avoid this, she has to wait at least one confirmation. She can also wait longer if she wants more security, but usually for small amounts, one confirmation is sufficient. And then after this one confirmation, she has to transfer the fiat or the national currency, or in case when she is trading an altcoin, she has to transfer the altcoin. And that's outside of system. So she goes to her banking page, she gets in the application all the bank details from Bob, so she knows where to send the money, and make the bank transfer, and when she has done it, she confirms it in the application. I have done the payment, and then the application sends this message over to Bob. And these bank details which were exchanged is only visible for her. So Bitsquare never see this data. And depending on the payment method, what you're using, we are supporting already 7, 8 different payment methods, and in future much more. They are the privacy. What you're losing against the other trader depends on the payment method. Banks require your name and the country and the bank account numbers and so on, so that data will be transferred to the other trader, otherwise he cannot pay you. In other payment methods like OKPay or Perfect Money, which are payment processors, you only have an account number, and depends on OKPay, it's a little bit more complex, but depends on your setup, you can be much more private because the other trader only know the account number, don't know your name or whatever. When you're using altcoins, you're basically, yeah, it's like Bitcoin, you are as anonymous as in Bitcoin. So when you're not making any mistakes that your real life identity get connected to this altcoin address or Bitcoin address, you're anonymous with a trade. And after, yeah, as we said, Alice was transferring the fiat. She confirmed in the application, and Bob has received this message that Alice has already started the transaction, and then he has to check if he has already received the money on his bank, as he also goes to his banking webpage, check if he has received the money. And or on this altcoin wallet, also with altcoin, he has to wait for the confirmations what's considered safe in that altcoin. Some altcoins, it's usually also 10 minutes or whatever to avoid that she's doing a double spend on the altcoin side. And as soon as that process can be very fast, like with OKB, it's instant, and many banks, when it's the same bank, it's also very fast or instant. When you make a SEPA transfer in Europe, in some banks and some countries, it takes up to 3 days. I don't know why. I think they send the money by post, mail, or I don't know. It's probably faster to send it by post, but I don't know. Maybe they have not upgraded from the mainframes from the 70s, and now they will upgrade to blockchain, so probably it will be better then. Anyway, yeah, that can of course delay a lot the trade when you are unlucky and one of the buyer used or one of the banks is super slow. It might take a few days. When you use a more modern system, it can be much faster, of course. And the duration, how long a trade takes, is basically limited by this one blockchain confirmation before to avoid the double spend. And then it depends on this payment method. Can be instant or can be up to 3-4 days, whatever. And as soon as Bob has received the money, that you see, okay, he has got his $500 for his Bitcoin, he's basically happy and the trade is over for him. But to avoid that he is now lazy and just forget about it, that's why we need the security deposit on both sides, because he wants to get back his security deposit. He has sold 1 Bitcoin, but he has still locked up his 0.01 Bitcoin in the multisig. So he has the incentive to follow the protocol and click the button to say, okay, I've received the money, and and with that click, the pair transaction gets created, the 2 traders, or the software is creating for the 2 traders this multisig, so both are signing their part of this transaction and publishing this transaction to the network. And with that, Alice gets the 1 Bitcoin what she has bought, and both got back the security deposit, and both are happy and can go on with the next trade. And yeah, that's it basically. We're not done. And of course, that's not only theory and a concept that was 2 years ago. Now it's real. It's since 3 months we are using the mainnet and did a lot of tests. And since last week, it's official beta, so everybody, and beta does not mean that of course it's still in development, but it will stay beta in the next 10 years, like Gmail, I think, or Google Docs were 10 years in beta, and that's also my approach. It will be an ongoing improvement, and when you start trying it out, use small amounts, that you get used to it, that you learn it, that you're not risking too much, but it's public for everybody, and it works. There are already hundreds of trades done and 500 offers the last 2 weeks. And yeah, to get a little bit of impression how the application looks like, it has the usual stuff what you expect on an exchange, like charts for the market activities, the offer book where you can select your offers, then the screens, the forms for creating your offer where you fill in the data, how much Bitcoin and to which price. And I wanted to make a software demonstration initially, but I thought it would be too confusing. And basically, what I heard from many users already, that it's super easy to use. It's maybe easier to use like many other Bitcoin application or exchanges. So just download it, try, play around, and when you have problems, ask at our forum, at our webpage, and hope you enjoyed. So we're getting to the next part. We are still not done. Sorry. As I said initially, one important aspect is this organizational structure, that Not only the exchange and the infrastructure is decentralized, but also the organization. And we are using this concept of decentralized autonomous organizations, DAO or DAO, which luckily in one way gets a lot of attention at the moment and a little bit of hype maybe. I think the way how Bitsquare is using it is a little bit different to many other concepts which are actually at the moment discussed in the space, but I will go more in detail in the next slide. Before I go into more details, I want to give a little bit background why a DAO is important and why I considered to build it. I started the project alone, and the funding model is my own savings and donations from the community. And that's a model which does not scale very well, because when I get now really a lot of users, I cannot handle this workload. I need more developers, I need more people contributing, and to go the normal, traditional way with investors, whatever, you introduce a single point of failure. And I think this project needs another structure for this. And I think this DAO model is the best way how to implement an organizational structure which is also censorship resistant and which follows the same principles as Bitcoin and the decentralization. And how it basically works is that we have the lucky situation that we have already money in the system. When you're doing an exchange, you have the money in the wallet. You don't need to pay anything extra. And people, it's the usual business model in exchanges that they are taking fees, and that's basically I'm fine with this business model because that's an honest and direct business model. You give a service, and the users who are using it, they are paying a small fees. All the alternatives, when you get the stuff free, you are selling something what you are not, or many people are not. They're not conscious about. They are selling their privacy, their data, or the exchanges or the companies doing some other shady business, how to make their money, because no company can survive without any revenue. So when they are offering everything free, you have to ask, where are they getting their money? And mostly these direct models where you're aware you're paying this is the most honest and most direct. And these trading fees, with Bitcoin we have, of course, all these great opportunities to program money, and the trading fee is not going to Bitsquare as a DAO or as a company or whatever. It goes directly to all the shareholders. So the DAO is a construction of shareholders, of stakeholders, and depending on your percentage of the shares, you have a certain probability to receive the trading fees from a trader. So when somebody is creating an offer, he's paying, at the moment it's super tiny amounts, but later it will be more or less in the range of other exchanges. They will pay this trading fee directly to the other trader, to one of the shareholders. And the way how this is selected, and the algorithm and the code, that's in every application, and that's open source, of course, and every client has this code implemented and make the same algorithm how to select which shareholder will receive this fee. It's basically random, but the other trader can verify it. It's using the network ID and the offer ID, so data which you cannot change. So you cannot manipulate it, that you pay it somehow to yourself when you're a shareholder, and the other trader will verify it. Even if you manipulate the software and you deactivate the fee payment, the other trader will fail the trade because the other will reject it. And the fee goes directly as a micropayment, as a stream of micropayments from the traders to the shareholders. And I think that's a very important structure where you avoid that the DAO or anybody is collecting a lot of money and then distributing it, because then again you would have a big bounty for all the hackers to hack this person or this entity. And in this, there are thousands or whatever number, hopefully thousands or millions of traders out there and a lot of shareholders. And of course the hackers can hack all these thousands traders and all these thousands shareholders, but that's much harder like to hack one server. And another motivation, important motivation is, also I like basically this idea that that the people who are using it, who are building the system and so on, that they are the owner of the system. So that it's a collective ownership. And yeah, and to get the motivation for those people to contribute, they will get paid by shares. So if I need a developer and I find somebody who has time and the luxury that he can work for shares and not for direct money payment, then he can contribute to the project. He make a pull request, whatever. He tell me what he wants for this work, for this task, and if it's in the range that it's acceptable, and if it's good work, then we will accept it. The board of this DAO, that will be the group of the top stakeholders, they will sign it and they will issue a new share, and then this contributor who has contributed anything which is valuable for the project, that not only limited to developers, there can be anything which makes value, spreading the world, making a video, or providing liquidity, whatever creates value for the project, they receive these shares and become a shareholder of this DAO. Other people who don't have time or skills for contributing directly, they can buy shares when somebody is selling his shares on Bitsquare, as these shares are tradable over Bitsquare, and he can buy this on the market, whatever is the price, and it's the normal market forces of supply and demand. And one important point is that we don't plan to do a ICO, as that we're issuing a lot of shares and sell it on the market and get millions of this, because that triggers a lot of problems. Because then one thing is then you have a lot of money and all the hackers come to you and knock your door, and I don't want that. The other problem is that I don't want to promise anything and maybe we cannot deliver. Maybe the system fails completely and in 3 months it's over, and then people have spend million and then they will go to the lawyers and sue me or whatever. I don't want to get in all these troubles, and it should be a slow, organic process where people can follow it. When somebody's working a month and then he decides, no, that's completely bullshit and that's a bubble and has no value yet, then he should stop. He has risk maybe 1 month, but that's not 10 millions or whatever. So I think it's a model where the people who are investing in with work or with buying shares, they're risking much less, and for us it's much less problems, and we are avoiding all these problems with the regulation also, because that there are regulations for the exchange and for these IPOs and so on. That's for some reasons, because there has happened a lot of problems, scams or whatever, and then people got upset and went to the court and want to get back their money and so on, and then they created the regulations because there were some real problems behind it, and to make an IPO or ICO following this traditional model does not work, because you are doing the same stuff like in the traditional work, so you should not be surprised to get treated in the same way like a traditional company, like a bank or whatever. When you're holding the user's funds, you're a bank. And Bitsquare tries to avoid all these problems. I don't want to spend 100,000 euros in lawyers. I prefer to find a solution where I don't touch these problems. There is nobody holding a lot of money. So these rules does not apply to this model. And another important point is this model is not in place yet, it's not implemented. It's also still not a white paper, so there are still details to need to get fleshed out. I hope I can implement it in the next months, maybe 3-4 months, but there's no promise. If anybody want to contribute, it's open to everybody. If anybody want to contribute, they have to contribute in a voluntary way without expecting anything, like a donation. They do it because they like the project. If the DAO does not work because of some legal restriction or whatever, they should not have any problems later with that. So it's really an important part for me that people are not now getting into the model just for the money. That does not work with this. So maybe later when the DAO is in place, they can do whatever they want with it and with whatever motivation. But at the moment, these people who are the early adopters and try to help the project, they should be motivated only by the ideas of the project and not by the money, what they can make with it. And to organize, I mean, I really want to get a very wide community around this project, it should be really driven by the community. And to organize and to manage this is really difficult, of course, when you make it in a traditional way. And I'm inspired by this great book of the founder of the Swedish pirate parties, Rick Falkvinge, Swarmwise, the tactical manual to changing the world. And that's a fantastic book. I really recommend it to read. Everybody, at least who contribute, should read it, because I want to apply these ideas to Bitsquare. And that's basically, he described how he created the pirate parties and how the pirate parties worked in a very self-organized way, in a non-hierarchical way. Without any money, they created a huge momentum and and built up a lot of stuff. And it was completely open, completely transparent, global. It was copied in many other countries. And there are very interesting ideas there. And I think this, it might be a little bit difficult for people who are used to the traditional modeling company where somebody's always telling you what you have to do. That will not happen in Bitsquare. I don't have the time to tell everybody what should be done. I'm not a project manager and don't want to become a project manager. I just want to steer the very basic direction, and the people should find themselves where they can contribute, where is the need, where they think, okay, that can be improved. Maybe on the web page this sentence really sounds like shit, but that guy is not from England. That's an Austrian who don't speak well English. That has to be changed and send a suggestion, whatever. And that might be a little bit a challenge for people to learn. And I think for me as well, it's an experiment. I don't know if it will work out, but it's for me a very important part of the project. And I'm completely convinced that it's the right model to go. And we will try this, that direction. And I think that's this combination of this Swarmwise with the DAO and with decentralized applications in general, it's much more like this particular project, like an exchange or whatever. I think it's really a model where you can create alternative solutions for work, for cooperation between people, for solving real problems, for building killer apps, these killer apps which will help us to not get killed by ourselves. Like, I mean, it's really crazy. The investors pour a lot of money in stuff like IoT and self-driving cars. I mean, is really the world suffering of the big problems that we don't have more self-driving cars? I don't think so. I mean, we have climate change problems, we have migration problems, we have tons of really, really tough problems, and no investor gives you money to work in this direction, of course, because the business model, this capitalist system in what we're working is not compatible with that stuff. And those problems really need to solve. I mean, it's threatening our existence at the end. And when we are not clever enough and smart enough to make the right move to escape these wrong models, which are not working for everything, it works for certain stuff, but it does not work for common goods. It does not work for long-term goals where you maybe get just a return in 20 years and not in the next half year. And we need to find alternative models. And I think this, what we have now from the technology and from the conceptual side, are fantastic tools where we need to experiment, and some projects will fail, and it's a long process for sure to find out what works and what not works, but we have the stuff, we have the building blocks, and we have to go in this direction. I think that's a question of our future, and the future can be bright. It's just the question if we build it that way. And when you get motivated a little bit at least, visit us at bitsquare.io. On the webpage you find all basic information for downloading the software, for reading the white paper, get in touch with the community. We have a forum, IRC channel, a Slack channel, all kind of stuff. Videos, you find information on a very high level, and then on the more detailed level, if you have more time to read more. And if you want to contribute, get in touch with us. The forum probably will be the the main area, the main platform where we are cooperating, where we are working together, and that's probably the best place to start. And yeah, I hope that gave a little bit of motivation to something which is a little bit different to the traditional stuff what's happening in Bitcoin. And for me, it's a little bit a shame. I mean, we got such a great gift from Satoshi, from the real Satoshi, with Bitcoin, and there are very few projects at the end which are following the same ideas. Most are it's very oriented in a traditional way to make quickly money and make the next block explorer. I mean, who needs the next block explorer? We need other stuff. And yeah, hopefully we're getting more in this direction. Thanks a lot.